but without further ado, I want to go ahead and welcome our very first speaker, Dr. Kathleen Bogart, the Director of Social Disability and Interaction Lab at Oregon State University. She'll be presenting her expertise on the psychosocial impacts of living with a rare disease. My wonderful colleague, Suzanne Plank, will be moderating Q&A at the end of this session. Remember to type your questions in the Q&A box or use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen to be called on by the moderator to ask your question aloud. Dr. Bogart, we are so happy to have you here with us. Feel free to take it away.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am really excited about this presentation and about this chance to connect with the community more. It is very convenient that I am virtually only a few miles away here in Oregon State University in Corvallis, so like a 45-minute drive to Eugene and FARF headquarters, but of course we're all remote now, so I didn't get to take advantage of that connection yet. So let me go ahead and pull up my slides, get those shared. Okay. Hopefully that's displaying for y'all. Let me know if what I'm seeing is different from what you're seeing, because from many hours of lecturing to my students online now, I've learned that seeing is not believing in terms of Zoom. So today I'm here to talk to you about psychosocial impacts of living with a rare disease. And, it turns out that I have both personal and professional interest in this topic. So, I'll start with an outline here. And really, it's important to start with the fact that, I have a personal background in these issues. I was born with a rare disease, a different one than Fanconi Anemia, certainly very different medical ramifications. My condition is called Mobius syndrome, and it primarily involves facial paralysis and eye movement limitations. And so being born with this and experiencing the world with a very visible difference and something that affected the way I communicated really made me fascinated with the way that people with differences are stigmatized. And so that led me to pursue, degrees and research in this area. And so now I conduct research both on my specific rare disease and more broadly on the collective experience of rare diseases. And that's what I'm going to be talking to you about today. So I've found what I think are some universals that are experienced across most rare diseases. Certainly we have many different medical underpinnings of our conditions, but the psychosocial stuff that is my domain actually ends up pretty similar across the 7,000 different rare disorders. And I'd love to hear your feedback on this. So what resonates with you, what's different for you? I'm going to talk about the value of support meetings, especially useful right now, given that we are in a support meeting, although different from the kinds that we've been in the past. I'll tell you about an ongoing study that I'm doing about coping with COVID-19 among people with rare disorders. And I'll give a few examples of ways to resist or fight ableism, or this stigma against people with disabilities and disorders. So first, let's talk a bit about what it means to have a rare disorder, right? So many of y'all have probably seen this sort of messaging from NORD. about how common actually the rare disorder experience is, right? So actually 1 in 10 Americans has a rare disorder, but there are 7,000 different rare disorders. So although the experience of having a particular disorder like FA or Mobius syndrome is rare, the collective experience of all the challenges that we're aware of is actually quite common. So, one of the things that I am going to point out today is that while medical research for treatments and cures is super important, we all know that it's quite slow when we're trying to understand the underlying mechanisms of 7,000 different rare diseases. But psychosocial support and treatment can be applied much more quickly across so many different conditions at once. So let's talk about some of these universals I'm thinking I'm seeing. So first is stigma. So many people with rare diseases way before the pandemic were feeling quite isolated. Of course, we know that with the rarity of our conditions and our geographic dispersion, we'd never walk around in our hometown and just run into someone else with our same experience. And indeed, most people with rare diseases and their families want to meet others with their conditions, but most have never done so. And there's this really large lack of public awareness, so that people haven't heard of our particular disorder. If our disorders are visible, they're kind of unrecognizable to others. They notice that there's a difference, but they can't put their finger on why. If our disorders are invisible, then we get a lot of disbelief and just some really strange kind of misunderstandings, right? So sometimes people will actually assume that our non-contagious disorders are contagious. We might be blamed for having our condition. People might minimize our conditions or even question the legitimacy of them, that they can't see them and they've never heard of them. So this leads people with rare diseases to kind of face this dilemma, this burden of whether one should explain about your condition to others or not. So on the one hand, explaining about it can help you advocate for yourself and your community, and perhaps will bring greater understanding. But at the other side, it can be quite exhausting to feel like you need to do this every time you interact with someone new or someone significant. And, there's questions about, do I really have to tell a stranger my medical details? So I think these decisions happen a lot behind the scenes among people with rare disorders. And now the other universal I want to focus on is the need for specialized social support. So our research and others suggest that it takes an average 7 to 9 years to get a rare disease diagnosis. And of course, there's a lot of variance around that too. It could take much longer, or you can luck out. So 2/3 of people with rare disorders feel that they do not get sufficient social support through informational and psychological systems through the healthcare system. And so when the psychologist tells you about social support, we actually mean 4 different categories. So let me tell you about each one. And we believe that in order to live a fulfilling life, that we should really have all 4 of these buckets full. So the first is companionship support, and this means that you are spending time with others and feeling a sense of belonging with the group, doing fun activities with people who you feel like you connect with. Emotional support is feeling understood and validated. Informational support is getting useful knowledge. And tangible support is, just getting practical assistance with things that you might need, like chores and supplies and things like that. So we also suspect that there might be some other similarities and differences in experiences across rare disorders. So a few years ago, pre-COVID, we did a large-scale study that was a survey that involved both open-ended questions and closed-ended validated survey measures. So what I want to first tell you about are people's open-ended responses about challenges that they experienced. And my students and I developed a coding system to qualitatively analyze their responses. And so what I'll show you next are kind of the main themes that we saw in the data. And I'm really interested to hear if if this resonates with your experience as well, and if you have anything to add. So what I'll show you are kind of the top themes that came up. And if you notice, they're in order of frequency. So the most frequent comment was about disease symptoms. So, of course, these are things like fatigue, shortness of breath, feeling unwell, whatever symptoms your disease comes with. And then we had, challenges about activity limitations. So getting used to the limitations, you can no longer run, can no longer play golf easily, things like that. Concerns about treatments, even getting a treatment in the first place. So many of our disorders do not have any treatments. And then the uncertainty around, okay, a treatment does exist, but everyone with our condition responds differently to it. And speaking of uncertainty, that was a common theme in itself. So many people struggled with not knowing what to expect regarding the progression of this disease, and if there was something more that they could be doing. And we had a couple of types of social support that emerged as really important to people. Companionship was the first. So a quote from the participant was, "Becoming more and more isolated because my fatigue doesn't allow me to do anything else outside of working. So I don't spend time with friends as much as I used to, but they also either don't seem to notice I'm not around, or maybe it's a relief to them to not have to plan things around my abilities or accessibility needs." The second type of social support that emerged as quite important was informational support. So I get no information about my care from my current doctor, and my requests for information or help with symptoms are brushed off. So another important theme was doctor-patient communication. And so this participant said that it took me years to get diagnosed because so few doctors even believed how much pain I was in and how sick I am. And then finally, stigma. So one quote was, "I hate pitying looks, weird advice, and always the doubt of people who I thought knew my character." So, we've cataloged some challenges here, and, I'm guessing that you're feeling at least some connection with some of these challenges. And the idea here is not to, just keep reiterating on how hard it is, but it's to give us a sense that there could be some solidarity among us with very different rare disorders. And so in that vein, I want to tell you about one more thing that we did with this study. I want to tell you about the survey results, or the quantitative measure results. So we really have some documentation now from this study that there are challenges across so many types of rare disorders. There were more than 250 different rare disorders represented in this sample. So, so in this quantitative part, we used what's called the PROMISE set of surveys. This was developed with the National Institutes of Health to measure a variety of aspects of quality of life. So that included anxiety, depression, fatigue, pain, interference, physical functioning, and ability to participate socially. So the neat thing about PROMISE is that it has been normed to the general United States population, and it's also been tested among people with common chronic conditions. So we were able to compare the rare disease sample to these two normative groups. And, you know, it probably won't surprise you at this point, unfortunately, that people with rare diseases scored significantly lower than both population norms and people with common chronic diseases on all categories of quality of life, and especially fatigue and physical functioning. And indeed, people with rare diseases experienced worse anxiety than 75% of Americans and worse depression than 70% of Americans. So again, the point here is that, you know, I think we were all fairly aware that there were mental health challenges within our specific communities, but we may not have been quite as aware that this is happening across many different rare disease communities. And this is actually a good sign to know that this is a common issue, because it means that people with a variety of rare disorders and a variety of rare disorder organizations can band together to support better. So looking out a bit, I want to talk to you about a few ways that we can improve these mental health challenges. So one of them is a study that I did about a rare disease conference, just like the one that we're having now, except not just like it at all, because it was held in person like all of our conferences used to be. But this one in particular was focused on the Mobius syndrome community, my home rare disease community, but we suspect that it would apply to many other communities as well, and we're interested to learn how it does. So, you know, here we were interested in the benefits and challenges of attending a rare disease conference, similar to FARF. The Mobius Syndrome Foundation holds a conference. It's every 2 years, and it's held over a weekend. About 400 people come, and it's really, you know, felt in our community as you know, a time to come together and meet others, or see one's extended family again. And, you know, it has a combination of research and medical talks, and then informal discussions and social events as well. So the opportunity to present all sorts of social support. Oops. So we were interested in examining, did I skip a slide here? No, okay. We were interested in examining the reasons that people attended these conferences, the benefits and the limitations involved in the conferences. And we wanted to look at adults with Mobius syndrome, and we also wanted to look at parents of people with Mobius syndrome, because those are the two main groups of people that attend this particular conference. And we thought that there would be different benefits. So Mobius syndrome is congenital. So by the time you're an adult with Mobius syndrome, you're probably pretty familiar with managing your symptoms. Symptoms are also stable generally across time. But we thought for adults, the main benefit would be psychosocial things like reducing stigma and getting social support, and things like that. But we thought for parents of children with Mobius, who really are the ones who need to first learn about the condition and navigate care, we thought that they would benefit more from things like self-efficacy and caring for their child with Mobius and getting information about it and things like that. So we did this a few years ago, again, pre-COVID. We sent out a survey a month before the conference occurred, and people who did and did not attend the conference completed the survey before and then a month after the conference occurred. So we were able to see if there were changes that occurred from attending the conference, and we were able to compare that to people who did not attend the conference. And we included both open-ended questions, and we also included standardized scales of the variables that I mentioned, stigma and social support. So I always think the qualitative findings are the fun part when giving a presentation like this. So here's the fun part. We found some common codes around social support, again. In terms of attending the conference, adults with Mobius said, "It's the rare place where I feel normal. I found a place here where words were not necessary to establish acceptance and feel a part of a community." And the parent said the greatest benefit was in Philly 2 years ago, where the conference was. Our son got off the elevator, saw a kid about his age, and said, "That boy looks like me." And then related to informational support, which was used more frequently by parents, the parent said, "I look forward to the research and appreciate hearing updates on studies and surgery." Next, emotional support was mentioned frequently. I found out that there are a ton of people out there who understand me. And then the last theme I want to focus on here was role models. And the parent said it was really encouraging to meet adults who have Mobius syndrome and to see the young adults and teens knowing that our kid would be okay, that he'd grow up and be successful. And almost in reaction to this, an adult with Mobius separately commented, "I enjoy and embrace being a silent role model for parents and kids." And then with our quantitative analysis, we detected a number of changes for those who attended the conference compared to those who didn't. So as we predicted in adults with Mobius, we saw increased social comfort, reduced stigma, increased companionship support, and increased emotional support. We also saw increased knowledge and informational support, which we hadn't especially predicted in that group, but it was good to see. And in parents, as we predicted, they experienced greater rare disease self-efficacy, meaning that they felt more confident in their ability to care for their child with their condition, and greater knowledge about Mobius syndrome. So, you know, these results suggest that adults and parents receive different types of benefits from attending a conference, but there are indeed measurable benefits for going. And I would be very curious to hear from you guys in the FA community if you have, you know, experienced similar benefits from your conference and, you know, additional benefits that we weren't able to capture here in this group. Of course, you know, now we're in a situation where we are doing all of our conferences online. We held our Mobius syndrome conference a couple months ago online. And there are pros and cons to this, just as Mark and Jordan mentioned. I think one pro that we can really focus on, a silver lining, is that more people are able to attend safely, and be able to kind of take more time for themselves if they need a break in the comfort of their own home and things like that. But at the same time, as Jordan was mentioning, I do suspect that we're missing a little something by not being in person with each other. But I think that if we engage in this kind of online interaction long enough, we'll figure out some ways to make our interactions richer. And it sounds like the FA community is doing a pretty good job with engaging Slack and things like that. So I'm going to be jumping on that later, and it'll be interesting to see how that works out. So the last study I want to tell you about is a study that I'm currently running. So I'll only present preliminary things, not final data. But this is a study where I wanted to basically follow up on that first large-scale rare disorder study and see how people are doing during COVID. So I can give you a clickable link later if you are interested in participating in this. We've had a few people with FA already participate. But essentially what it is an online survey, again, with both open-ended and closed-ended questions. So we started this back in May, so we're getting to see how, coping develops and changes over time during COVID. Currently, we have 760 participants with a variety of rare diseases, and it's an international sample. And so we're recruiting, through rare disease organizations and social media. So briefly, I'm going to tell you about some qualitative findings. I'm not going to tell you about the findings from our quantitative open-ended stuff yet, because we're still analyzing that. But, again, bringing up these challenges is intended to maybe give some validation to some of y'all and to me who are experiencing challenges during COVID, and sometimes it feels like the challenges are especially heightened because we have rare disorders. So for me, this is a way to validate our own experiences and see that, there are others out there who are dealing with challenges as well. And then in the next slide, I'm going to present ways people have been coping. And people in the rare disease community are so resilient and, in some ways have really already become experts in managing, an uncertain health condition. So we're almost like specially trained for dealing with something like COVID. So first, what challenges are people experiencing? Well, the themes came out with all 4 types of social support. So people are, struggling to get simple needs met, like getting, instrumental support, like having someone to come in and do caregiving for them if they need help with chores and things like that, getting transportation to medical appointments. Struggling with emotional support because of that lack of physical connection that we often have now. There's also within this a term called touch hunger, which is what it sounds like when humans go for a long time without human touch. We actually start to really crave it. We feel that it is a biological drive, much like eating. So this is certainly a challenge. Companionship support, people are missing, hanging out in their normal ways with their friends and social groups. Challenges with just getting proper information, right? Seeing how the information about COVID has, developed and is still quite limited really parallels the experience that a lot of people with rare disease have with their own condition. And then combine those two, and we have a lot of people with rare diseases reporting that, you know, their organizations and doctors don't know how their disease would interact with COVID. They don't know if they're at greater risk or not. So there's a lot of additional uncertainty there, as well as some people who clearly know, I believe in the FA community, for example, that, that they are at greater risk because of COVID. So of course, there's challenges around getting to healthcare, not only getting to the doctor, but, you know, things that, you know, the general population may not think about as much. So some people have chronic pain conditions and, you know, really crave that physical therapy appointment that they get once a week that helps relieve their pain. Additionally, problems with getting treatments and medication access, of course. There were people who were about to start clinical trials that were then paused due to COVID. So a lot of issues related to that. Challenges with getting supplies and food, of course. Stressors about having, you know, being with your family all the time, or maybe extra caregiving, or you know, engaging in teaching your child while trying to do a job. Many of these things, of course, are things that those without rare diseases are also experiencing, but sometimes rare diseases add an extra challenge, extra layer of challenge. So travel and transportation restrictions, of course. Here we all are remotely. We would love to be connecting in person. But, you know, this also means that people who need to travel across states to attend medical appointments for their rare diseases have had that limited. We see lots of sleep issues, both in the rare disease and the non-rare disease community, and it goes both ways. Some people are sleeping way more, some people are sleeping way less, or just very idiosyncratically. We have some interesting challenges with masks. Many people with rare diseases have already been in the practice of wearing masks when they are going out into a large public area, but some don't. And indeed, some actually have conditions that make it difficult to wear a mask. So we got some comments about that. And then we also got some interesting comments about the flip side, which is people with some rare disorders that make the face appear different, like my own. When we wear masks, the majority of our difference is covered. And so some people have been commenting that they actually feel you know, that life is a bit easier and less stigmatizing when they're wearing a mask and can kind of fit in with the majority more. I've written like an essay about this in Psychology Today. I can link to that if anyone's interested in it. I have my own thoughts about wearing a mask that are complicated, and certainly I wear a mask and it's important to do so. So we're also seeing reduced physical activity and reduced access to nature. Of course, with rare diseases, we have varying ability levels, but you know, most people, regardless of their ability level, want to engage and need to engage in physical activity and being close to nature. You know, of course, we're hearing people report that their anxiety and depression has increased or, you know, started during this time. We're seeing extra isolation, of course, and we're seeing financial stress. So how are people with rare diseases coping during this time? So here's the more positive, you know, flip side of what I just presented. And again, I want to validate that Most people who responded were able to indicate some ways that they felt that they were coping well, but not everyone did. So I want to validate that if you're sitting here and you're feeling that you're not coping well, that's okay too, and that is normal. Hopefully, getting this collection of ideas from other people with rare diseases might give you some things to add to your toolbox and try out. And I would love to hear from you guys in comments as well, what you've been doing, like what's the single most helpful thing that you've been doing? So, you know, one of the main ways, no surprise, that people have been attempting to cope is via social support and connecting in, you know, ways like this, right? Connecting with video chat. So with friends and family, people are connecting to their church that way. Co-workers, you know, some people have caregivers that live in their home, or family members or caregivers that can come in, and that's really helpful too if they're in that situation. Engaging in online support groups for rare diseases, a lot of those have cropped up, and playing social games online as well. And equally important to receiving social support is giving social support. And people mentioned a lot about that, you know, finding value in caregiving for others, taking care of pets. You know, we often think about social support between humans, but pets are an excellent way to get and give social support. And, you know, we're hearing so many stories of people getting pandemic puppies, and, you know, finding that really valuable. Volunteering with rare disease organizations and other meaningful causes. I really liked this idea. And one person, actually a couple people, said that they had been writing greeting cards to loved ones and mailing them. So a nice little old-fashioned gesture, and also a way to support the Postal Service. So engaging in physical activity and nature in creative ways that work for you during the pandemic, you know, and this varies from taking walks, doing yoga, you know, even if you're not able to safely go out, you know, observing nature from a balcony or a courtyard, or even watching nature shows on TV or going for drives, all ways to you know, get a different environment for a little while. Lots of hobbies people are engaging in: art, gardening, adult coloring, crochet, puzzles, you know, it goes on and on. You know, I don't have to tell you that we're probably watching a lot more TV and having more Netflix binges than usual. People especially mentioned liking to watch comedies and stand-up at this time, and listening to music and dancing. People also mentioned things like engaging in faith and prayer, and other things like meditation and mantras to get someone present in the moment. And, you know, to deal with the challenge of getting supplies, a lot more people have been engaging in online ordering and getting, you know, say, groceries and prescriptions delivered. So that's been, it's one way that people have been coping. Engaging in a news diet. So what this means is that, you know, we want to stay informed about what's going on in the news, but we also want to avoid kind of getting sucked into the doom scrolling, where you know, just keep reading and reading for hours and getting obsessed. So, you know, a news diet involves intentionally saying, okay, I have, you know, 1 or 2 news sources that I think are high quality. I'm going to engage in getting information from them for, you know, 20 minutes a day or whatever you decide, and then move on. So People, have been talking about how having a routine helps them, and related to that, some people are working and learning remotely, which has also been helping them. And then there are lots of themes of resilience that came up, so many that I have a couple of extra slides about it. So let's go over to them. So let me define resilience for you. Resilience is adapting in the face of adversity and maybe even coming back stronger than ever. And there are some factors that are related or that comprise resilience that include gratitude, compassion, acceptance, and meaning. And we see a lot of these themes coming up in what people with rare diseases are saying. So people are talking about skills that they have already gained because they have a rare disorder. Having a rare disorder teaches you resourcefulness and tenacity, and makes you stronger, and often teaches you how to be a really good self-advocate. So in times of a unprecedented pandemic, these skills are great to have. And people are, mentioning focusing on the positive and silver linings, spending time thinking about what they're grateful for, and engaging in humor, looking at the the ridiculously funny side of things at this point. And I have a couple of quotes to share with you. My coping primarily includes awareness that my family and I are okay in this moment, and trying to remain always in this moment. And change is inevitable and can be beneficial. I like to think something good can come out of it. And so using that quote as a good transition, I now want to talk about silver linings that people thought of when they were responding to this survey. And again, I'm going to qualify this with not everyone saw a silver lining in what was going on, so that's normal too. And the things that people were hoping for were kind of hoped for in various levels of believing it will actually come true. But I think that focusing on these issues is important because some of these things can be made to happen if we engage in advocacy around it. So, for example, lots of people were hoping that this would result in more accessible policies. So many people with chronic and rare diseases have been trying to advocate for the ability to work from home and the ability to work flexibly for a long time. And it took a global pandemic, but within weeks, we saw that it was possible. Similarly, people have been advocating for more telehealth when appropriate. Clearly, we've seen that happen as well. And these are things that we can advocate for keeping around. There's also a hope for greater empathy for people with rare diseases. Participants mentioned some similarities between the experience of, COVID is this new condition that doctors don't know about. There's a lot of uncertainty in the general public around it. And we are needing to quarantine and be careful of our hygiene and things like that. And these are things that people with rare disorders have been engaging in for a long time. And so they're hoping that this will make the public more aware of the types of things that we go through. They're also hoping that COVID advances might bring about advances for rare diseases as well. So there are some specific rare disorders that are actually benefiting from treatments that are being developed for COVID that also help the rare disorders. And we're also seeing a very fast-tracked vaccine process, and there is hope that there could be other fast-tracked drug development that can occur afterwards that could benefit rare diseases. Hoping for greater respect for science and healthcare providers, and hoping for more continuation of being able to connect online, especially for some people with rare diseases who will always have difficulty traveling. So, there have been calls for more online support groups and for continuing at least some type of access to rare disease conferences online. Normalization of preventing disease spread. So, the public can just remember to wash their hands and actually isolate when they're sick. It could benefit everyone. I'm personally also hoping for more online ordering and supply delivery. It makes many of our lives much easier. And there, people saying that they feel and hope that they're going to come out of this stronger physically and mentally. A few people have been engaging in like very very ambitious physical training routines during this time. Not me personally, but more power to them. And people, hoping that having a slower pace and time to rethink priorities might continue, and enjoying the extra time to spend with one's family. So to summarize all of this, I think you're getting a sense that the major themes here are social support and stigma. And stigma can be reduced by increasing social support through conferences like this, and also through advocacy. So let's talk for a minute about what I would recommend in terms of social support. Be sure that all 4 of your social support buckets are full, and that you are providing those buckets to others if possible. And there are a variety of ways to do this. So you can get and receive support at conferences and support groups. You can also do this through mentoring people who may be newer to a disease. And of course, both the mentor and the mentee really benefit from this process. And volunteering to help causes like this one that matter to you. And advocacy plays such an important role in reducing stigma. So this includes things like raising awareness of our disorders so that the public is better able to recognize their validity. And it also means advocating for better treatments and social support and better policies. So I just want to give you, maybe go out on kind of a lighter note and show you some examples of the way that my research team and I have been engaged in advocacy over the past few years. So we celebrate Rare Disease Day every year in the lab, and in the before times we would have a event that we would hold in OSU's quad, where we would invite campus and community members to come out and engage in activities. And we handed out, educational materials. The thing I really like about this is that I'm educating undergrads to think more about rare diseases, because most of the students in my lab are undergraduates. And I ask them to really kind of make the Rare Disease Day event their own. And so in one of our more recent years, we had an undergrad who designed some handouts, and these are some of the messages here. The text was taken from Nord, and she created her own designs behind it, and I thought they were really nice. So just to read some of them out. It says 1 in 10 Americans has a rare disease, and she's indicated some different icons of how that might look. There are more Americans who live with a rare disease than all of those who have either HIV, heart disease, or stroke. I thought that was a really powerful statistic. And only 5% of rare diseases have treatments. So we handed out information like this. And we also created this little sign template that you can download online, and we also had them at our booth in the quad. And we invited people to write why they were rare. Whether or not they had a rare disease, it was an opportunity to think about what makes us all unique and how that can be shared. So we have lots of photos of campus community members participating. Here's a collage here. We have, I think one of my favorites is my director here who says, "I heart data," and I agree. And we've got like some service dogs involved. This is a really fun event. And so, you know, I just want to close on that note that, you know, I know that Fanconi anemia groups at FARF engage in rare disease advocacy quite well. And, you know, to just think about how beneficial this can be, not only for finding meaning in your own individual life, but for making the world a better place for people with FA and for people with, you know, the 7,000 different rare disorders. So I want to thank y'all for listening, and I'd love to hear what you think about this work, what resonates with you, what you'd like to add, and any questions that you have. And here's my contact information. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now so I can have a better view and conversation. So do we have any questions?
Yeah, I think we do, Dr. Bogart. Thank you so much for a really informative and relevant presentation. I'm wondering, before we get started on the questions and answers, we might have been missing some of your last slides. It was still on a previous slide from another topic that you were discussing. So maybe before you leave us today, you could put that in the Slack channel, and that would be great, because it looked like, or sounded like, you had some good information. So yeah, we do have some time for question and answers, and I just want to remind people that you can go ahead and type your questions into the chat box, or you can raise your hand and then I'll call on you and you can ask the question yourself. So while we're waiting for people to get started, there is one from one of our international friends who happens to be in Australia. And she's wondering if the C19 quality of life study is open internationally, or if only US participants are allowed.
It is international, so yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see, remember you can raise your hands, you can use the raise hand function, or put a question in the chat box. I don't think everybody's awake yet. Okay, Amelia from Australia says thank you. I think she's happy to be a part of that. Have the chance.
Awesome. Great to hear.
So I came up with a couple questions. I'm wondering if you could discuss what you have found through your study to be the most effective universal social support mechanism. Was there any one that sticks out for most people?
So, you know, I believe that people with rare diseases especially need companionship support. That's the one that comes out the most. And some of the best ways we found to deliver it are these sorts of, support conferences, support groups. So I'm really interested to see how this develops as we are, connecting more online. I really think there is value in seeing each other, as I mentioned. So, I think enabling the video chat is really important. I think there are other things that we can play around with to improve, our ability to interact, like getting into small breakout groups and things like that. But you know, these sorts of inter-rare disease interactions are really important. What I've studied are, you know, conferences that focus on one specific rare disorder, but I think something that could be really promising is looking at cross rare disease social support as well, given those commonalities that I've mentioned.
Okay, great. Yeah, it sure is nice to have these video conferences and just the ability to see each other, different than just being on the phone with somebody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We do have a question from Faith. She'd like to know if you can define instrumental support again, because she missed that when you spoke about it.
Sure. So instrumental support is also called tangible support. And so that's kind of what it sounds like. It's getting practical assistance doing, you know, tasks or getting things done that you might need done. This could include caregiving or having someone deliver supplies or take you to a doctor appointment or something like that.
Okay, great. Faith, if that wasn't what you wanted, ask again to clarify that. Let's see. I'm wondering, you know, you discussed what the most effective universal social support is. I'm wondering if our community would like to have some input and maybe discuss and give some insight into what they find has been the most effective for them. So if you guys want to chime in, we'd love to hear from you. And while we're waiting for that, it's kind of along the same lines, Dr. Bogart. I'm wondering what you've found to be the most effective coping mechanism or tool during COVID. Has it really changed how people cope, aside from the rare disease, adding the COVID in? Do you find that to be consistent, or has it changed?
So it sounds like what you're asking is, has the way we cope with rare diseases changed due to COVID?
Yeah.
It's I think it has, but it's just in a subtle way. So we're still engaging the same coping strategies. You know, we still are seeking social support. We're still engaging in, you know, fun and meaningful activities for ourselves, but the way we access them is different, right? So we're using more technology to do that. And, you know, let's be honest, it's more limiting because we can't, you know, go out and, you know, do most of the activities that we usually did with our friends and family, right? So it's usually, okay, we're going to sit in front of a screen and talk to each other. When our interactions used to be a lot richer, right? You know, oh, maybe we'll go out to dinner together. Maybe we will, you know, go play, you know, a sport together or something. So people are having to get more creative about that.
Definitely. I think we all have, huh?
Yeah.
Wondering also if you have found that your study results for the Mobius population can be extended across to other rare disease populations like FA. Do you find them to be pretty consistent?
I would be really interested in examining that.
Okay.
So when I present this at other groups that, you know, are not the Mobius community, you know, I hear that there's a lot of similarities, but we haven't studied this in other conditions yet. So that's really something I'd be excited about.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting and helpful. Just going to check to see if we have any other questions.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys in the FA community are doing to cope. What are some of your best tips?
Yeah, just type it on into the chat box and we'll get it out there. We'd also are wondering, Dr. Bogart, if you could link your article from, you mentioned the article in Psychology Today about the mask wearing and how that's changing. Do you mind posting the link to that in our Slack channel?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to.
And just to remind everybody, that Slack channel is the Psychosocial Impacts of FA. And yay, we have a question. So our first one is that somebody feels that it's very valuable and I think really appreciates to have the professional speaker who actually uses the term we as opposing to you, and they say thank you.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, very nice. So it looks like we're getting some responses about how people are coping during this time. And one person said yoga. Another person gardened all summer, gardened all summer and getting doctor's appointments done. Not quite sure what that is. Maybe being able to get to the doctor relieved some stress. Somebody hired a mental health counselor that and a life coach, which sounds really great. Somebody else had is using the Calm app for meditation and sleep stories. And then repetitive tactile things like cooking, baking, gardening, and plant care. Some really great things coming up. Somebody moved and got a new job. Yay! Congratulations.
Nice.
Hopefully that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Let's see. Meditation and box breathing. I don't know what box breathing is, but maybe I should learn. Somebody does virtual movie nights with friends. They start a movie together at the same time and message each other in a chat.
Very cool.
Sounds fun. Yeah. And cooking and baking for sure. Somebody also does that. Some really great ideas. Thanks everybody for those that gave us some great ideas. Learned to crochet. Took up a new mindfulness skill and discovered that she loves puzzles.
Me too.
I think a lot of puzzles. The puzzles were off the shelves.
Yeah, I hadn't done a puzzle since I was a child, and now, yeah, it's like a major activity in my life.
I think it's nice to visit those things we don't do very often. It states that someone once told her that when you care for plants, you remember to care for yourself. It's gotten her into a good habit of checking in with herself about how she's feeling and taking care of herself. Thank you for that. Another person began training at home, I'm guessing exercising in the morning, and lost weight. Yay! And made him feel much better. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Those are great bits of input. And remember, you can continue that discussion on the Slack channel. So that'll be up there for the duration of the meeting, and you're welcome to use that to communicate with each other and share your ideas. And somebody said, started seeing a psychologist online, which is what a great service and gift that has been for many, I think.
Absolutely. And we got a lot of that feedback in the survey too. It's been really helpful for people.
Yeah. Started doing the treadmill every day. Great.
Nice.
Okay. I think we've gotten some great input, some really great ideas. Thanks again, everybody, for contributing. So I think if we don't have any more questions, we will go ahead and take a break. So we'll have a break until 9:30. So I have 9:10 now. You have about a 20-minute break. I just want to remind everybody that you'll need to leave this portion of the meeting and click on the link corresponding to the next session so that you can get into that one. So you'll have a new link to click in on. And thank you, Dr. Bogart. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to continuing the conversation on Slack.
Thanks. I will be there.
Okay. Take good care. Bye.